G'day folks. Today I'm making a video that I never expected that I'd be making. But I was actually planning on creating an investing video around how to create a blog that achieves 500,000 plus views every year. But unfortunately that's no longer possible, and this is why. So why am I exposing Bigfooty? Well, here's why. So upon sort of saying why I'm leaving Bigfooty, so this may have been a touch before, it may have been a touch after, but basically my signature feature had been removed. So basically on there, what I had included, and this is a feature available for all users except me it seems these days, but it was a feature that I was using to basically say, well, this is where you can find me on Twitter, this is where you can find me on YouTube, and I also had links to my investing content on there as well, which I strongly encourage people to get behind, which will enable you to get more financially educated, basically. So basically here, so I had some very odd exchanges to start off with. So basically Chief, who I imagine heads up Bigfooty, is basically sort of saying, oh, you don't need us anymore. That's a bit weird, sort of thing. So I found that a bit of a curious response. And then I had a bit of engagement with a few people. Basically, I had quite a number of comments on here basically saying, you'll be able to find me on Twitter and you'll be able to find me on YouTube and you'll still be able to engage with me in these spaces. But for some reason, it seems like those comments have been removed, which was a very disappointing response. And then, so there are a few more posts that I had removed and others heavily edited. And then this one here, so this is where I noticed that my signature had been changed. And for some reason, that capacity had gone. So my impression was it seemed like just in response to my video, this feature had been removed. But within this post, I had quite a lot more information and content posted. But again, my content had been heavily modified in a direction that wasn't consistent with its original meaning. So I found that quite disappointing, particularly given my standing in the community as the dominant figure on the draft board. So, and then he goes on to talk about, well, I'm advertising some NFT. Well, for anyone who's bothered to watch any of my YouTube content, or in particular my video around NFTs, they'll be well aware that, well, it's not a form of investment that I personally advocate. Because a lot of the time, well, what do NFTs consist of? Well, often it's a case of, well, they're JPEGs that are loosely connected to something with links online on an online server on the web. So, and often those servers just get removed or those websites get taken down and then you're left with nothing. So given that, well, no, I'm not a fan of the vast majority of NFTs, and I have never promoted an NFT. So I find this to be quite an ill-informed opinion. And then additionally, there's a suggestion that I've extracted a lot of value from Bigfooty, which I find to be quite an odd comment, because ultimately, well, people were extracting value from me. I'm the one that provided value to Bigfooty as a long-time poster who was there willingly answering people's questions. Even upon joining ESPN, well, I had no obligation to continue on Bigfooty. And in fact, it was something that I actually had to say as part of my contract negotiations each time, that I'm only willing to write for ESPN on the condition that I am able to continue my yearly AFL draft threads on Bigfooty and to freely engage with the community on there. So ultimately, well, that's not correct. And additionally, there's a suggestion here saying his blind guess is that I'm paid per view. Well, no, I'm actually, for those that are interested, I've always been paid per article. So whether I'm writing a weekly wrap or a power rankings or a phantom draft, I'm paid the exact same every article. And all negotiations in terms of payment per article are done before the start of the season. So Ultimately, I really didn't get any particular gain out of promoting my stuff on Bigfooty. So that's really how that is. So ultimately, it was just a case of, well, being on Bigfooty and communicating and engaging with the community has just always been a passion project. I've always enjoyed talking footy with the community. And in fact, I still do that on Twitter and on YouTube. So, but to get sort of this sort of content or this sort of response as someone who has done so much for the Bigfooty community, and for those, I guess, first 5 years of my tenure with ESPN, to really continue to engage with the community on Bigfooty, which are other people who, whether they get hired, whether it's by a football club, in the media, who come from Bigfooty, well, they're not necessarily continuing on Bigfooty. So I feel like I was actually the one doing Bigfooty a favor. So to get this sort of response, I consider it very disappointing. And to, basically have this as the reaction and to receive a ban hammer, I found that really quite disappointing. So, and additional things that I find to be quite odd. So this is an example of being gatekept. So it seems like I'm being gatekept by Bigfooty. So if I type in my username, which is Nightmare, well, I don't come up in the search. So given that, well, that's a bit odd. Whereas if I type in whether it's Chief, well, Chief will come up. If I type in Trade Draft, who's one of the more prolific posters on Bigfooty and a good bloke to boot as well, well, yeah, he comes up. But again, if you type in Nightmare, well, something's going on. So I'm not listed there, which is quite odd to say the least. So having my signature removed as a reaction, then not being searchable, it looks like. But then this is where the problem began. So I haven't so much as logged into Bigfooty since I received the ban upon announcing that I would be departing Bigfooty. So, but what I was hoping to do this week, and it's no longer really a viable opportunity, unfortunately, but I was hoping to create a video talking about, well, how I've received 500,000 plus views on every draft thread that I've done over the years, bar one, which was 2020. Well, what's happened here is something that's a bit curious and a bit deceptive. So at the time of receiving the ban, I would have had somewhere in the range of 497 to 498,000 views. So how I sort of personally track how well I'm performing is on views. And this is something where I had this video planned from the start of the year, and I was considering doing it at the start of the year, but then I received this ban, and then, well, that was a bit of a mess. So then I decided, okay, I'll leave it be. I since logged out of Bigfooty, haven't sort of been on since. But yeah, so basically I've been shortchanged what appears to be 100,000 views, because by now I would have gone far over 500,000 if I was on 497 or 498 at the time of receiving the ban. But I've also noticed with my other threads that similar has happened. So I don't know if my replies or comments have dropped, but basically with replies and views, I've always had the dominant thread. And with replies, well, oftentimes I'd be replying to sort of 5, 6, 7 comments at the same time, just with like a multi-post thing. So if I've got 4K replies, well, it's basically like doing something more in the range of maybe it's 16,000 replies to estimate. So that's probably how many people I've really sort of responded to. But yeah, if I go to the next pages, so let's have a look at my other threads. So I've got 2020. So this was the one that was in the 400s. So it should really read, I'm imagining, 435. I don't know exactly, but this was the one year that I wasn't able to reach 500,000. And with last year's one, technically, I would have only reached it sort of, whether it's in the middle of the year or whenever it might have been, following my departure from Bigfooty. And I was actually willing to be like to continue contributing to Bigfooty. I was actually very willing. So if someone, and this comes up in my earlier video talking about why I was leaving Bigfooty, well, I was still willing, if people tagged me in something, to still sort of show up and respond. So here we go. So 504, well, this should read 604. I was a long way ahead of that. Other ones, this might take a while to go through and find. But if anyone out there has print screens, I would be really interested to see, because if anyone's got print screens or done a snip tool or whatever you do with date stamps, I would wager from, would have been some months ago, it would be showing substantially more views on any of these threads that I've created on this board. So it's another suspicious thing that Bigfooty are doing, where it feels like I'm being gatekept. So it's possible others have had their numbers dropped. I truly don't know. I only keep track of my own numbers. But here, 2018, so you've got 495. Well, this should read 595 at least. So yeah, any years that I'm going through now, I'd be really curious to see if there's a contrast in views, because I know from my own numbers that I've been over 500,000 every year, except 2020. So something's up. Okay, here we go. So 2017. So what have we got? So 490, so that should read 590. Again, presuming it's precisely sort of cutting off 100K views. Okay, 2016, so 499. This should read, again, presumably 599. And whether they've got rid of any of these replies or comments, I've got no idea. That I don't keep track of, but views, I do to some degree keep a track of. So, and really I should have been taking print screens, not that I knew I'd ever need to, but yeah, it would have been good to be able to actually show people that, yeah, I achieved this. So yeah, it's just very disappointing, if indeed those were accurate numbers that were always being presented in the past. So here we go. So 2015, so I've got here 635. So look, it's possible if every one of my threads have been reduced down by 100K, well, maybe this should read 735. So when I spoke about in my original video that Bigfooty has no scope to scale, well, it appears around 2015, and I won't go back any further than 2014 because I'm sure you've got the idea. So here we go, 2014. So it says here 776. So this might have been when Bigfooty had hit its absolute peak in terms of its viewership. So here you go. So that's the biggest numbers displayed here. But yeah, look, should this read a higher number? Should this read 876? Has this been manipulated? Not too sure. It's that long ago. I'm not sure. So, but very odd stuff. It's fair to say. And I received this comment from one of my regulars during the week. So Greg, he's a prolific poster on Twitter, and I'm sure anyone who follows me on Twitter has realized that. But again, anyone who sort of, whether it's they tag me, comment on any of my stuff, whatever it is, well, I like to get back to people and give them some value back. So, but basically, as I'm saying here, well, Bigfooty doesn't really have any further scope to grow. So, and really forums are going out of favor. So that's the unfortunate reality that Bigfooty will have to face. So look, it is possible they're just deciding to fudge the numbers to make it seem like some of these old threads aren't being viewed as much, and maybe now that I've departed, well, maybe they're not going to do any sort of number wang and really make the numbers actually how they are to make this current cohort look maybe better than they are. So maybe that's something that is potentially happening for all I know. I can't say I don't know, but and I haven't been tracking things that closely, but it's a theory anyway, so I can leave it at that. But yeah, it's just really, I guess, a case of, well, the values that Bigfooty are espousing do not coincide with my own. So given that, well, unfortunately, I'm at a stage where, well, yeah, I'm basically cutting ties with the big footy community, and it's really a shame because I've so much enjoyed over the years engaging with so many people on big footy. So, um, but ultimately, well, it's not my problem, and hopefully in the future, the big footy community improves and yeah, has, I guess, a better perspective on things where they let people speak a bit more freely and yeah, go about their business. So, and show a bit more gratitude towards their posters. That might be nice as well. So, there's some advice right there. But anyway, it is what it is. And yeah, certainly at this stage, unless I see substantial change and improvements and feedback that things have really turned around, well, I have no intention of logging in and resuming what was previously regular activity on Bigfooty. So it is what it is. And ultimately, coming into the year, well, I had to make a decision as to, well, with ever increasing time commitments, well, can I continue ESPN? So, and can I continue Big Footy? Well, in the end, it was a case of, do I choose this or do I choose that? That's what ultimately the amount of time I could allocate came down to. So, given that, well, given obviously ESPN pay me and they're the biggest sports network in the world, well, that was ultimately what I chose. Just because, again, the time commitments, well, I couldn't make it work. So, and also given, well, again, forums are going out of vogue. I'm fully aware of my numbers and I'm aware that since sort of 2014, 2015, well, there's been a huge dip in terms of my readership. So, given that, given it's not scaling and doesn't appear to have any further scope to scale, well, yeah, it was a pretty obvious move to go with ESPN, who are the biggest media group in the world. And yeah, and obviously I get paid by them and they're great people and they allow me to write freely and write what I want. Well, on Bigfooty, which is a forum where you can just contribute your own opinions, well, basically I'm not even able to do that. So that's really disappointing, where I can't promote myself or be fully who I am. Whereas with ESPN, well, they've never told me, don't do this, don't do that. They've always been really encouraging and said, yep, keep doing that. That's really good. Or give that a go. Yep. So, yeah, ultimately it was a pretty obvious decision. And in hindsight, well, I really shouldn't have continued with Big Footy following, of course, my hiring with ESPN, because ultimately, well, I haven't gotten anything out of it. It's really just I've done it for the community to give back and sort of engage with people and be that sort of sounding board regarding draft opinions, trade opinions, list management opinions, because all that's been fun. So, but of course it hasn't paid anything and it's really given me personally no benefit other than just enjoying the general engagement with the community. So that's that. And I thought it's also worth adding on at the end that I won't forever be able to continue what I'm doing with ESPN. Hopefully I've got the time availability to really be able to continue doing what I'm doing. And I'm hoping this year, basically between now and the end of the year, to really bump up my production of content quite significantly. But yeah, basically in future years, I can't guarantee how much longer I'm going to continue doing what I do with ESPN. So at some point or another, I will drop back to just doing YouTube and just tweeting, but that would be in a very small capacity, certainly compared to what I do now. And I would have to, of course, reduce back footy watching commitments substantially, where my views won't be as strong as they are today. So, yeah, that's pretty much how it is. But of course, to maintain the amount of basically total games watched this year, well, yeah, obviously Big Footy gave way to make that possible. Thanks for watching, folks. And yeah, if anyone, again, I'll put out this call. If anyone has any print screens or snip tool copies or whatever you want to call it of any of the draft sort of like the total number of views from years past, and you've got like date timestamps, I'd be interested to see. Because, yeah, certainly I know from going through the numbers, and I'm not vain enough to actually make print screens to have timestamps myself. Well, just because it didn't occur to me and wasn't something that was important, because I figured it would always sort of display what seemed like the correct number of views and whatnot. So, but if anyone out there has actually taken print screens of the total view counts and comments counts, I'd be really interested to see. And yeah, leave it in the comments section below. I'd be very much appreciative, because it would prove my point that, well, there's some shenanigans going on here that just don't seem right. So yeah, hopefully others haven't been impacted as well. There could well be. I don't keep track of other people's metrics, but certainly I've been impacted by that number reduction and other sort of, I guess, forms of gatekeeping, from being blocked to having my signature removed to not being sort of available to be searched up. It's possible I'm being gatekept in other ways and I'm not even aware of it. But yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, anyway, guys, see you in the next video.